I wanted to share something with you that happened yesterday, in fact, on a spontaneous note, and I didn't quite know what it meant, but it was exciting and exhilarating, and I thought, I need to share this with you, and I want to immortalize this because, it is something that doesn't happen every day. So let me begin my story by saying that I did a bit of coding over the last few days. I built something called an asset library. In fact, I can probably show you this in my favorite web browser here. So it's under assets.wpguru.co.uk. It's a public website, public-facing website, in which I'm cataloging all my assets that I have for 3D use that I can distribute with the Unreal Engine. And it lists literally everything that I have, and that's kind of cool. And the moment you click on one of those links, it has a little thumbnail from the product page on there. So it's like, for me, this is a project that I can just keep track of what assets do I actually own and which ones am I allowed to use in 3D for 3D distribution. So this doesn't contain the assets that I have for 2D distribution, only the ones that I have for 3D distribution. So it's an open source theme that I've built, or a child theme that I've built, similar to the one that I have here. This is what I've built on a fairly recent Twitch stream a few months ago. This keeps track of all the games that I own, and I'll link to them in the bottom here. And it just lets me filter out what I have and what I haven't gotten. Long story short, this isn't really what I wanted to share, even though it kind of deserves its own video. Hey, I've got an asset tracking database library on one of my websites now. I thought it's kind of good to have, and greatly helps me out. If you want one of those as well, there's a link at the bottom of these websites. It says fork me here, and then you can go there, and that goes to my GitHub repository. And that's where all that code is. And that is really what I wanted to share with you, my GitHub profile and what happened there. I am, believe it or not, I've got the front page open here in another tab. This is my GitHub profile here. I am an Artic Code Vault Contributor. That is exciting. Look at that. This is a badge that happened yesterday. Just opened up. And I thought, hey, that's quite exciting. So I use GitHub just to finish off this whole GitHub thing. How am I even involved with GitHub? Why am I even using it? It's something like a cloud storage thing that lets you keep track of code. You can code with other people. You can save your code there, complex code, and you can view revisions, and you can do releases, and you can share it with others. Whatever you've made, you can share it with others. Many large companies use it, like the Blender Foundation uses it, Microsoft uses it, Apple uses it. So the whole Blender code is on there. All the open source projects that we rely on every day are on GitHub and openly accessible by literally everyone who wants to have a fiddle, wants to make a fork, wants to make an amendment, wants to have a look under the hood and say, hey, how does it work? Major Linux distributions are openly developing their code on GitHub, and anything and everything. So like the Swift programming language is developed on GitHub, and you can peek inside, and I love it. It's really nice. These are some of the repositories that I have here. These are the popular ones, like 3D Touch is an iOS repository. It had 104 stars. That's kind of cool. 28 forks, kind of my most popular repository. And so a repository looks like this. You go over there, and then you have all your code files here in folders. You have a description, and you have links to how it works. You can embed screenshots and all that. So that's what GitHub do. And, I really like it. I've been using it for many years, and it's free to use. It's awesome. And so this badge popped up here, and I didn't really know what it meant. The Artic Code Vault Contributor. It had a one-time window that gave me a link to a thing. And what it means, and this is why it's so exciting, it means that some of my repositories have been archived off to a black and white data film that will be archived north of the Arctic Circle in an abandoned coal mine in Norway, in the north of Norway. And it's film on which the data is that we can retrieve that from the film, but the data will last, check it out, 1,000 years. So some of the software that I've casually put on GitHub is going to be somewhere in the Arctic, and it'll outlive me and many generations after me for possibly longer than humanity is going to be on this planet. And that is just super exciting. And I was very intrigued by that. I didn't quite know how to take that, what it meant, why that has even happened. And I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share the fact that this has happened. Some of my code is in the Arctic for the next 1,000 years. It's lying there right now as part of a huge archive that the GitHub archive program has made possible. And they've done this because they believe that that open source software needs to have a storage space that is secure. It needs to be secure against cyber hacking. It needs to be secure against things like bit rot. It needs to be saved. It needs to be a way for us to not lose that intellectual property, as it were, and it must be retrievable for many, many generations, literally outlast for hundreds of years. And I find that whole thing super fascinating. I don't want to keep you longer than I need to, but I just wanted to talk to you about what this program actually is. So it came up with this little thing here, Artic Code Vault Contributor. It came up with a little thing that I could click, and it got me here to the GitHub blog on which they explain what this means. So this is kind of where my code lives, some code. I mean, not just my code, there's other people's code as well. Like the Blender up to fairly recently, I believe Blender 2.80 is in that vault for the next 1,000 years. Awesome stuff. And WordPress, as it were, like 5.1 or whatever the version was that they've archived off. And this is kind of what it looks like. And they describe this on their website here, the GitHub Archive Program, the journey of the world's open source code to the Arctic. And I'll link to that in the description below. But essentially, it outlines the process of how they did it and what happened. They have partnered with a company called piql, that's Piql. They're in Norway, and I think they essentially started making film printers and film scanners, and they have now gone, because film in cinematic distribution kind of no longer happening, so they had to reinvent their business model, and they came up with this thing of storing data on black and white film and storing it somewhere, or letting you have it, but making it retrievable so that generations after us can still access the data. And this is kind of what this looks like. So it's 35mm film, it's 3 perforations high. This is high resolution black and white film. It's not color film, and it's important to understand that because they have chosen this because they know how long it lasts. So to put it into perspective, magnetic tape on which you can record audio or video data, that lasts about 20, maximum 30 years, but that's at a push. So I remember when I was working in Hamburg, for Studio Hamburg, one of the archive projects that we did there was for German television, and they had lots of programming archived on 1-inch B kind of massive reels, and they were just like the music reels. They have transparent polyester thin backing onto which there's magnetic oxide tape, and it gets threaded through a machine. You can play it back just like a VHS tape. But the problem is that after 20 years or so, the tape dries out, or the adhesive that sticks the magnetic particles onto the plastic, onto the polyester, dries out, and as a result the magnetic coating kind of comes off. And there will be a point, and this is kind of my point there, where you won't be able to play these things back anymore. Audio tape, slightly different considerations. They might last a little bit longer, but videotape is subject to a lot of stress in the machine, and there's a rotating head that kind of scrapes off some of the tape, and eventually you're going to end up with any storage medium, you'll end up at a position where you can't read your data anymore. So it's kind of something everyone takes for granted, that every 10 to 20 years you have to migrate from an older format to a newer format. And in so doing, like say VHS tapes to DVDs, and then DVDs to hard drives, and then hard drives to, I don't know, bigger, better, longer, faster hard drives, whatever. But the problem is, in this transference process from one medium to another, you stand a chance of losing some data. And there's also a problem with older technology not being able to play back anymore. And that is where, like my company that I was working for in London, I believe Loft they were called, we had a big archiving project for Channel 4, and all their 1-inch C master tapes, they needed to be backed up to something like either digital Betacam or Betacam SP or whatever they wanted to have, one of each probably. And one of the issues that we had was there were not enough working 1-inch C machines in the world to buy, to use, to make usable so that we could play back the tape before it stops being, playbackable, if that is a word. So there's major issues with migrating older formats to newer formats, and that's kind of, that's why this Pickle project is so super exciting. So they went ahead and said, hey, what we know will outlast most of us is black and white film, not color film, because that also shifts in kind of that'll degrade, the color in it will degrade, and black and white is actually silver halide particles, and that doesn't go on anywhere. That's literally like metallic particles embedded into gelatin. We know it's been around long enough for us to know it'll survive more than 100 years, and especially in controlled and good conditions. So Pickle worked together with the people who made Orwo film. They're now called Filmotech, I believe. They're close to Berlin, slightly south of Berlin. That's a German company. They're also working with Harman. Harman used to be the old Ilford company in the UK, renowned for the HP5 and the FP4 film and all that. So they're working with them, and they're of course working with Kodak. So it's 3 manufacturers that make the film for them. And this is what it looks like, black and white film. And so this is how they store the film. I believe there's on the Pickle website, we can have a look at in a moment to see what these film frames actually look like when you enlarge them. But yeah, so this is what they make. And at the beginning of the film, so they don't just have the data on it, they have in human readable form. Like here, you can see GitHub, you can see Pickle in similar form. They have these little text frames here. I don't know if you can see them, but there's a human readable description in various languages that explains how you can build a machine to read the film and essentially restore the data if you've lost all equipment that would be necessary to access this stuff. Is that weird? That is just so cool. So that's what Pickle do. Pickle, we'll look at that website in a moment and how they do it and what they do is very, very fascinating. But anyway, GitHub said, okay, we need to archive our software on that stuff. And that has happened, including my software. It's now on there. It's on film like that. Then it gets packed up into massive boxes like this. This is all in Norway. And these boxes now, they can either be shipped to you or to me or to another storage location so that you could eventually retrieve the data, or you can let Pickle do this. And Pickle, as part of the service, have this thing that they can archive this in a controlled little plastic box in a secure location on the planet. So I'm in Florida, and we're plagued by hurricanes every so often. It wouldn't be wise to store anything worth of value in my home, because I know it could, there's a chance that a hurricane would wipe this away. Similarly, California, not a good place to store stuff because, earthquakes, wildfires and stuff, it could just, get wiped out. So you mustn't store things there. The cloud also springs to mind. Don't store things in the cloud if they're valuable to you. Anyone who runs the cloud service could pull the plug at any moment, and then what's going to happen? Technically, all your data is gone, and you're reliant on them to archive your data, which they should, but do they? You never know. So anyway, GitHub chose to make a snapshot and put it onto this film, put it into these boxes, and take a Pickle on the offer, load it onto this airplane, and go so many hundred kilometers into the north of Norway, where a logistics company now unloads these things, and then they put them into an old coal mine shaft, where it's basically, north of the Arctic Circle. It's a demilitarized zone agreed on to by so many countries who say, we're not interested in that for resources or for any purpose, so we're demilitarizing that. So we're not going to go attack that because there's no way we're going to have an advantage of either going there, going above it, or whatever. So it's a safe place on Earth. It's many degrees below zero, so there's, as freezing is happening there. There's no wildlife, there's no animals that could eat this stuff. So it all gets put into this container, into little silver little envelopes, into a plastic box. That's where the film is. And if ever we need it, we can go back there and, retrieve it. Not so much you and I, but the people from Pickle. So you can't go there, you can't visit this. That's also, one of those things. Yes, and this is how, the reason why this even happened, so this is an example of why other people have this Arctic Code Vault Contributor badge as well. The reason why this happened is because GitHub was saying, hey, we're going to go and make this happen. We're going to archive anything that was on GitHub, that was active on GitHub between 2019 and 2020, anyone who's had active repositories or repositories that were starred more than, I believe, 200 times, so obviously what the world regards as important software, that we're going to make a snapshot of that, and we're going to archive that for like 1,000 years. And it is quite impressive that they've done that. And yes, these are some more photos from other things. So GitHub is owned by Microsoft. They've fairly recently purchased this, and this is only one portion of their archiving process. I believe they outline this over here in archiveprogram.github.com. There's a little movie you can watch and see where that went. I can't rebroadcast it here, of course, but you can have a look in your own time. And these are some of the repositories that were archived here. The Bitcoin project, Node.js, TypeScript, WordPress, jQuery, like really, really important stuff. CocoaPods, Homebrew, the package manager for Apple, Ruby on Rails, and stuff like Torvalds /Linux. Yes, know about that. Blender, I'm not sure if Blender is on the front page here, but I'm sure they're on there. So that's why I'm seriously interested in that. So they have several stages of archiving it, and they're working with several people here, like the Long Now Foundation. They are responsible for they were involved with the Long Player project. Don't know if you've heard of that, longplayer.org. Similarly, super fascinating project, a piece of music that will repeat itself in 1,000 years. 1,000? Was it 10,000 years? I don't remember. So I don't know, there's a thing, I believe yes, this is it, the flexible, durable strategy for archiving code. So the Arctic Vault isn't the only place where they archive code. So one is github.com, that's the website, and red means this is kind of highly available, so it's near real-time retrievable. There's other services that they use to back up their data ongoingly, and some might take a little bit longer to retrieve your data. The Internet Archive is one of them. There's also the Bodleian Library in Oxford. They have a copy of the films that are in the Arctic Vault, by the way. They also store code on their hard drives. Very interesting. There's the Arctic World Archive. That is it. So every so often they will make a snapshot of what's currently active on GitHub and put that there in the vault. And then there's something even weirder that they're working with, which is the Project Silica from Microsoft Research, who are etching this data into quartz, which is, oh my God, totally cool. It will last 10,000 years though. That's longer than humanity has been on the planet. That is, well, not quite, but you know what I mean? This is kind of long-term thinking that is just unbelievable. And they're telling you more about how and why this lasts and what's in the 2020 snapshot that's just been taken. So I'll link to that. You can look at that in your own time. And I suppose the basic idea of it is that humans and their thoughts are highly volatile. We're living in a world in which things that we put on a hard drive could be gone tomorrow. We might not remember it. Kind of interesting to think about that people might be watching this video in 20, 30 years. And I won't have a local copy of that by that anymore. I'm kind of relying on the fact that YouTube will have made continuous copies so that people at that point can listen to what I'm saying. I mean, it might be interesting, might be totally boring, but it is one of those things. What we do happens in the cloud, happens on the internet. And if that goes away, there's really no record of us. If we go away, if the cloud goes away, how will anyone visiting this? It doesn't matter if it's humans who've long forgotten that we ever existed. Think of Egyptian civilizations. They had started writing things down, but a lot of their civilization hasn't survived. And we're talking rock and stone. What are we talking here? Bits and bytes on some hard drive, that's $50 at Tesco. So you go, yeah, that's bizarre. So I like this thinking. I think that's what I find so touching about it, that someone out there cares, and it's not about us and the moment. It is literally also not about the next 10 years. It's about the next 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years. So there we go. That is explained all in here. And these are the people who kind of behind there. Christine Moran, computational astrophysicist and security engineer. Cool. It's a good title. Brewster Kahle, Internet Archive. Shannon Lee Doherty, archaeologist, anthropologist, and historian. And many other people who are involved in this project. So cool. My code is on there. Isn't that exciting? I cried when I read this. I cried yesterday. This is unbelievable. To me, this is seriously touching. Let me show you the Pickle website here. So Pickle is the company that makes this happen. And if you have long-term storage needs, please hit them up. You know, Pickle is rethinking data storage, and they have some pictures here on the website. But the most interesting thing, this is kind of how the film reader writer looks. So it looks almost like a telecine. I used to work with machines like that, telecines they're called. They were there to turn film into videotapes or into a video signal that you can then record. And it's kind of, film restoration services use this all the time to be able to turn an analog film image into electronic data. They have a pair of these things for that whole data storage thing. One's a reader, one's a writer. And, you know, UNICEF deposits child convention in the Arctic World Archive. Very exciting stuff. So at the very bottom of the website, they have the Arctic World Archive here. There we go. This is how they work. This is why it's there. At the very bottom of the website, there's technology here. If you click on that, you get, I think, one blog entry, which is this one. Click on that. That lets you have a downloadable peek at a PDF, or we can have a look at an online version, which is here. I think we'll do that. That is kind of a flip book thing. Creating the ultimate digital insurance, and this is kind of where they're telling you how they're doing it and what they're doing it. Let me just go and show you this in kind of slightly larger. Can we do this? Can we do this slightly larger? Hello, can we? Like that? No. Yes. There we go. No, it doesn't really go larger. It just stays like that. So anyway, this is like a dude lacing film, and on the next page we can see what these things look like. So what's actually on the film. This is what it looks like. This is what a frame looks like. Down here we can see 3 perforations high. Hollywood motion picture is picture frames are 4 perforations high. Just to put that into perspective, this is 3, and it reads and writes it at 40 megabytes a second. So this is kind of like a USB 2 spinning hard disk that you can write data to. That's how fast it can happen. So that's kind of nice. And yeah, so this is what a frame looks like. This is what it looks like if you zoom in quite a lot. So this is literally looks like a QR code. Every frame looks like a QR code. And that's what these frames look like. This is what the storage medium and the film actually looks like. Oh, can we not do that? Yes, we can. There we go. Can we? Hello, there we go. So this is what the film looks like. It's 35mm film, comes on a film core. It's about 600 meters long, one reel, and it comes in a special plastic box that's specially manufactured for the Pickle guys. The Pickle box, they call it. piqlFilm, special high-resolution film made by Kodak, or the old Orwell factory, Filmotech, or the old Ilford factory, now Harman. And so 3 independent suppliers, just in case one goes bust. You don't want to rely on one supplier. You want to rely on a group of suppliers who work as per your specifications. So that's the film. And then we have the 2 objects that are just big boxes, really. One's a reader, one's a writer. The Pickle reader, Pickle writer. And they are, I believe, in the next slide. We can see it a little bit better. Tells you a bit on the workflow here. There's a picture of them open. So this can be opened and closed by a robot as well. So people don't have to get involved in here. Robots can do this. Retrieve your reels of film from a library. That's the idea. So reader and writer. This is obviously closed when it exposes the film. It has to be developed and stuff. And this can be open when it reads the film. But yes, this is what it looks like. This is how it works. I find that absolutely fascinating. And I've just found out about it yesterday. And I just wanted to share this with you because this is just so super cool. Yes, so now I'm an official Arctic, what's it called again? The Arctic Code Vault Contributor. And some of my exciting repositories are here. Not just my repositories, not just my code, but also contributions I've made to other people's code. Like, I don't know if you know Morten Rand Hendrickson. This is something, can I open this? There we go. Morten has a theme on his website, and it's called Coon. And I have made a contribution. He's accepted one of my code requests. And for some reason, his theme is now in the Arctic World Archive as well, and I'm listed as a contributor, which is absolutely amazing. Other software contributions I've made is a demo project for 3D Touch, and a live photo converter and a Plesk backup script and probably many other things that have been archived. I mean, they're not large projects, but it looks like that over 100 people found that useful enough to star it. 28 people have forked it and turned it into their own project. It's an old project, but they must have thought this is significant enough that we're going to include it into the Arctic World Archive. Isn't that something? I thought I wanted to share this with you because I found that super touching. Links to all these things are in the description. If you want to read more about the project, then, have a look at the GitHub archive program, Microsoft Silica project, also very interesting, where they're etching data into quartz, which is just unbelievable. And of course, piql, who now put things onto high resolution film, and then they're going to put it into the World Archive, the Arctic World Archive, next to the World Seed Archive, which is also there. Quite exciting. There is, I just wanted to finish with one story, and this is why I find that interesting. When I used to work in the film lab in Berlin, where I did my apprenticeship in 91 to 94, we had a famous film director. Actually, I'm going to show you his picture. His name was Wim Wenders, and he's still around. I'm sure he's got a Wikipedia page. Let's have a look. I haven't looked at it. Wim Wenders. There he is. That's him. And he became famous, thanks for the advert, maybe later. Maybe later as in close. And, don't bother me. There we go. That's him. Wim Wenders. That's him. So he's a filmmaker. He came to, can we just see that? There we go. That's him. He came to fame with a movie called Paris, Texas. I always thought it was a weird title because back then I didn't know that there is a Paris in Texas in the US. I thought it was kind of a travel movie from Paris to Texas, but it's not quite like that. Anyway, he made that, and he made lots of other art movies. I don't think they ever had massive commercial success, but like the German cinema often doesn't do that. There's wonderful treasures in there though. And when I was working at the film lab, Gaia Berlin, he made movies while I was there. And I was fortunate enough to actually personally make copies of his original negatives for premiere screenings in the Berlin cinema. Very exciting stuff. So, one of the things that we were discussing, not me with him, but him with the opticals department and me with the opticals department. Sadly, I never met him. That would have been really cool. But so what we were discussing is, how do we keep his films in long-term storage? And this is kind of why that relates to piql. So if you shoot something on color negative film, eventually that color negative film isn't going to be viewable anymore. It'll degrade over time. The color isn't stable because it's made of chemicals that just degrade over time. Black and white film doesn't behave that way. Black and white film is stable for hundreds and hundreds of years because it doesn't degrade. It's a molecule that just doesn't change. So he was saying, how are we going to make sure that my movies are going to be viewable in 100 years' time? How are we going to do that? I don't want to risk losing that. How are we going to do that? Because we were then storing his original negatives in a vault, and it was climate controlled, but there was a shelf life to this. So how are we going to solve the problem? So our opticals department, the people I really loved up there, there were only 3 people. And they made titles, and they made all kinds of optical things like make sure you turn an original negative into an interpositive, turn the interpositive into duplication negative, so that you can run 1,000 copies of that. If that breaks, doesn't matter. You take another one from the interpositive, so that you have a new duplication negative. You have multiple duplication negatives, and all that. This is what that department did there in the film lab, and so they were saying, we have an idea. What we could do to preserve your movies, your original movies, is to go and make sure we put them through 3 prisms, essentially, and split your color negative into 3 black and white positives. And they will then be stored on black and white film, and you can use those to turn them back into a color negative. It's a complicated process. It's expensive, and instead of 6 reels of film, say, you end up with 3 times 6 reels of film, which is 18 reels of film. But the advantage is that the black and white material isn't going to degrade over time. And you know what? That's what he did. That's what he did with all his movies. And I don't know what happened to them now. I think Gaia is out of business. They're no longer in existence in Berlin. but the negatives must still exist, and I'm sure he would be one of those people who store them at home or in a special kind of vault. And it was just, I thought that long-term thinking had fascinated me back then, and this was, we're talking 93, 92, 93, that sort of caliber. So many years ago, 30 years ago at the time of me recording this video. And the guys who used to do Technicolor film, they had a similar issue. When you think about movies like Gone with the Wind from the 30s, you didn't really have color negative film onto which you'd shoot. So they would shoot the color movie with a very similar approach, a very similar attitude. They had obviously a color set and color people and all that, in bright reds and bright greens and all that, and they would shoot through these ginormous cameras that would split the light through a prism, end up with 3 reels of film, black and white film, that would store the color information for red, green and blue on black and white film. And then when it comes to the printing process, and this is why Technicolor is such a cool technology. Technicolor, I believe that is it, the Technicolor process, I would imagine. There's so many things. I can't find it here, but that's the Technicolor process. That is essentially printing, much like you print a colored newspaper, in 3 layers, the thing that actually is shown in the cinema, so that you end up with a colored thing that you can shine white light through, end up with a colored picture, but it's stored on black and white film. And this is exactly what Wim Wenders did with his negatives, and that's just so awesome. Anyway, that's what Pickle do, essentially. That's why they use black and white negatives to store, or black and white film to store our precious software. And I'm in the lucky position that my software is on there. Some of my software, not all of my software, but software that is dear to all of us. Anyway, that is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.